When it first released back in 2008, I got very invested in Wii Fit, in part because at that time in my life I had just started to go through a strange fitness and exercise obsessed phase, but also partly because I was a massive Nintendo fanboy. The appeal of Wii Fit, as someone who was at the time quite motivated to exercise, was that I could tailor my own exercise regimes from the comfort of my own home, without any need to go to the gym, something that to this day I have still never done. The feedback on whether you were correctly performing a technique and the scoring of parameters such as your balance in Wii Fit, while not always entirely accurate, is helpful, and the ability to see which muscle groups are being used and being able to see explanations from all angles rather than from the back of a crowded Pilates class is fairly useful. Revisiting home exercise with Wii Fit U earlier this year, I started to analyse its shortcomings. I'm no longer as driven to exercise as I was as a teenager, and therefore I find it difficult now to get motivated to do the same old routines over and over. There's really only 13 worthwhile muscle training exercises in Wii Fit U, and getting through them all will take about 30 to 45 minutes depending on your difficulty settings. While I get some enjoyment out of this sort of training, it isn't really enticing enough for me to want to experience it over and over, since it feels more like a chore than a fun exercise activity. Obviously, Wii Fit and its sequels have a variety of more interesting activities to help you burn calories, but many of these barely feel like a workout. Jogging has always been one of my favourite activities in Wii Fit, as it's quite fun to explore Woohoo Island's various routes by overtaking your guide and chasing after a dog or cat at specific points during your run. The disappointing thing about this is that there's only 6 distinct routes to take on the farthest distance setting, and seeing the same sights over and over again gets dull for me. I thought that the orienteering mode added in Wii Fit U would help to remedy this, as it's kind of like jogging but with the objective of finding characters dotted around your map from a reference photo. But the game's insistence that you run at a snail's pace, or you might injure yourself, and the inadequacies of gyro control for turning make this a lot less fun than it should be. As for other worthwhile aerobic exercises, I can say that the only one that feels like a good workout is the hula hoop, registered trademark. The step aerobics, step boxing, and dance games all feel like variants on the same theme and don't do much to raise the player's pulse rate or get them to break a sweat. The majority of the balance games on offer are more suited to being fun party games than actual exercise, as very few of them offer any sort of workout, with 1 or 2 notable exceptions such as the core luge. Wii Fit's issue is that its fun activities are separated from its workouts, and therefore there's little to make you want to come back to it if you aren't exceptionally motivated to exercise. While the ability to tailor a workout and get some modicum of feedback on your performance is nice, the breaks in between each exercise can be lengthy and often leads to me adding in some dumbbell exercises in between my planned workout so that I have less downtime between planned sets. I think the biggest issue might be that the low amount of content means that it's difficult to play the game for more than an hour without getting bored from repeating the same exercises. So I fell out of love with Wii Fit U, and my weekly workouts using it became monthly and then dwindled away to nothing. Luckily, Nintendo announced this year that they're bringing out their next fitness product, Ring Fit Adventure, which looked a lot like it might fix the issues I have with Wii Fit. A light RPG story with multiple worlds to explore and content which should last roughly 90 hours? If that doesn't automatically sign me up, then I don't know what will. Well, maybe this guy's unblinking and unwaveringly manic smile.
So how will you battle your enemies?
So I pre-ordered Ring Fit and decided in the meantime that I'd make some sort of video to officially get some of my thoughts out there for anyone who might be interested. Part of this will be working out whether or not Ring Fit is good as a fitness aid. For reference, the day before Ring Fit Adventure arrived at my house, I was a 6 foot tall, 68 kilogram man. I take regular exercise in the form of jiu-jitsu training 2 to 3 times a week for roughly 3 to 5 hours total exercise per week, as well as jogging a few miles a week. My weight is usually fairly stable, ranging between 66 and 72 kilograms. I can't remember the last time it was much outside of that bracket, and even when I do overindulge, it tends to return to about the midpoint fairly quickly without much need for change in diet or increase in exercise. I think I probably have my metabolism to thank for a lot of that. It was almost immediately apparent upon starting Ring Fit's adventure mode that it was going to provide me with a lot of what I felt was missing from Wii Fit U. Within my first 30 minutes of play, I felt more tired than I had at any point during the previous day's multiple-hour Wii Fit session. I tapped out after about 2 hours of playing, roughly 54 minutes of in-game exercise time, which is handily tracked for each play session. For comparison, the first time I got back into Wii Fit after a long hiatus, I was able to do about 3 hours worth of play before stopping. Ring Fit runs you through a quick series of tests before you can get started with the adventure. It tests your pulling and squeezing power to gauge the maximum force you can exert, and also asks you how much exercise you normally do and your intended level of exercise. This sets two values for you: the amount of force you need to maintain while doing attack techniques in order to do maximum damage based on your maximum force score, and a difficulty from 1 to 30 which corresponds to the number of reps the game will get you to do for each exercise when attacking. The difference between difficulty 1 and 30 is pretty huge, since you'll be doing 2 reps of a typical exercise at level 1 and 37 at level 30, combined with a longer hold time per rep as you increase the difficulty. This is a stark contrast to Wii Fit U, which won't unlock higher reps of an exercise until you've completed it a few times, regardless of how fit you are or what you think your ability is. During the main gameplay loop, you'll spend your time doing aerobic exercises such as jogging, sprinting, and high knees running in order to move through the mostly linear paths. Occasionally you'll stop running in order to open a chest, break a rock, or to access one of the game's more novel forms of transport. All actions in the game are based on your body's movements. The gyroscopes and the Joy-Cons will sense jogging and squatting motions as well as your upper body's position as you twist or turn. The Ring-Con peripheral is used to detect pulling and squeezing. If you're ever confused, there's always a handy visual representation of your current exercise displayed on the left-hand side of the screen. On your jogging routes, the paths will occasionally branch, but this just results in a reward such as money or items for taking the upper route versus falling to a lower one. Some early levels will also tease you with routes that are inaccessible until you gain the ability to do a double jump. Enemies will block your path in most, but not all, of these jogging routes. They can be avoided through the use of well-timed jumps, but you'll miss out on gold and experience points. Touching an enemy will bring you into a turn-based battle. Ring Fit starts you off with 4 exercises to use for attacks in battle, and you unlock more as you explore the world, level up, and complete side quests. I'm a little disappointed with the low number on offer at the start, as you only get to work a few muscle groups until a little later in the game, but it wouldn't really be an RPG without some sort of progression and skill unlock system, and besides, if I just wanted to exercise then I could do it in one of the less fun modes. As you level up, your base stats will increase, and once you reach level 40 you start earning skill points for leveling up, which can be put into a skill tree to unlock things like extra slots for attacks in battle, new exercises, and bonuses to your stats. This skill tree continues to expand as you reach higher levels. There's a surprising amount of strategy to be had when it comes to battling, which becomes more layered as you progress further through the worlds. After the game's second world, you'll unlock the ability to do more damage to enemies if you use attacks based on their colour. Red are best dealt with by arm exercises, yellow by abs, blue by legs, and green by yoga. Some attacks will also hit multiple enemies at a time. In many cases, you'll want to target a specific enemy to take it out before the rest of the group. For instance, the yoga mat-based enemies are able to heal themselves and other monsters. Dumbbell-type enemies will often telegraph that they are charging up for a more powerful attack, and Megafauna can buff their party and summon backup. You can create smoothies when outside of combat which have effects like buffing one exercise colour or giving you a defense boost. Where this gets interesting is when you start to unlock smoothies which change all skills to match their colour. This can be really beneficial because if you get sick of doing squats for instance, then you can make your arm skills blue. If you end up in a battle with the wrong skill set equipped, it might just bail you out. The gear you wear will also give bonuses in battle, such as a percentage boost to one colour of skills. Some sets will even give bonuses in the field such as faster running speed and giving you health back from high knees jogging. Bosses will sometimes challenge you with a special move as well, which will often involve you breaking thrown objects by squeezing out blasts of air at them, or holding a sustained exercise to win a power struggle. This does a lot to make the boss fights feel a little more unique. You aren't given a break during enemy turns either. You can decrease damage taken by putting up a strong ab guard by squeezing the ring against your midriff. Skills go on a cooldown for a couple of turns after use, which is a good way of getting the player to cycle through activities and focus on different muscle groups. I tend to start off with a few exercises I find tiring and then move on to something like a yoga pose to get some stamina back. You can also pause at most points during a battle, even mid-attack. You don't even need to press a button, the game will just let you leave the ring con while you go do something else, or take a break to recover if necessary. An issue I take with the combat system, however, is that the damage skills do does not seem to correlate to how hard the exercise is to perform. To play optimally, it would make more sense to use the higher damaging skills without giving every muscle group a good workout. The damage bonus to coloured enemies does away with this issue a little, but in boss fights and against neutral coloured enemies, this doesn't really apply. I feel as though 26 reps of overhead presses should do more damage than 40 of high knees, because it feels like I'm putting in more effort with the press. You later unlock level 2 and 3 versions of the same exercises, which are performed in exactly the same way but do more damage. However, level 2 skills are much stronger than the most powerful level 1 skills, and when all your skills reach level 2, you're left with the same problem that some are just more powerful than others. Although skills go on cooldown, which stops you from just doing the same one over and over, these are rarely unusable for more than 3 turns. This could maybe have been remedied by letting players choose how many reps of each exercise they want to do in exchange for more or less damage output. There's a few issues with the combat system other than this. I didn't have to use healing skills at all during the game. It seemed like a waste of a turn to heal when instead I could just drink as many smoothies as I wanted and attack in the same turn. Since smoothie ingredients are abundant, I never felt the need to hold back on using my healing items. The only time I feared that I might lose a fight was about 2/3 of the way through the game when I came up against a boss who locked my ability to use smoothies for a couple of turns. I scraped through, and although it did lead me to reconsider having at least one healing move on standby for boss fights in future, I still never needed to use them. As a result, there were a few exercises I never tried out, and it would have been nice to have the option to use these as attacks instead of heals, or even as a way to apply debuffs to enemy creatures. My final issue with combat is that a lot of the moves rely on you switching sides halfway through your reps. If you defeat an enemy before the transition, you may end up only working out one side of your body. A better solution would have been to have you finish your exercise regardless of if the enemy is defeated, and then just have them fly off after you finish. The sound design during fights is very clever. The game's soundtrack is quite catchy, if a little repetitive, but it has a good rhythm to it which helps with workouts during fights. Depending on which type of exercise you are performing, the song will adapt to make it easier to get the rhythm right. Fast, repetitive motions come with a clapping metronome-like percussion line, whereas music takes on a more ethereal quality during yoga poses, which helps to encourage the player to slow down their movements.
Starting position. Be sure not to put too much weight on your lowered hand.
The game does a very good job, just via sound, of making you aware when an attack is fully charged and whether you are in the correct position to get maximum power. A little swing noise will indicate that you're in the best position, have reached maximum force, or that you've charged a yoga pose enough. There's also a distinct audio cue when it's time to complete an action. As well as all of this, your sidekick Ring will give you encouragement, exercise tips, and will help to keep you in time.
Left, right, left, right, left.
I really enjoy exploring the world of Ring Fit because it's quite pretty and a lot of the enemies have really fun and cute designs. The kettlebells look like dogs and are aptly named kennel bells, bell dogs, and pit bells. And I love the resting animations on the puffer squish. There's a lot of character in the animations, and the enemies always look fearful in anticipation of your incoming attacks. It's just a shame that towards the end of the game, rather than change the enemy design slightly as had been done previously, the enemies just gain a dark aura. The named characters you meet along the way are often endearing, and you're never too far away from some sort of exercise-related pun. Characters have names like Dashley, Allegra, and Abdonis. You'll converse with Spartan warriors, and later chapters take cues from classic stories such as The Wings of Icarus and The Wizard of Oz. Many characters make repeat appearances, and they're all infused with a fair amount of character. I found that I liked most of the characters in the story. Even Ring, whose cheery personality I initially thought might get annoying.
Your sweat is so shiny and beautiful! Your muscles look so happy!
One thing that can really break immersion though is that many of the courses across different worlds are exactly the same, just at a different time of day or with a few extra obstacles to smash through. There's a few common themes for levels such as Factory, Marshland and Hilly Grassland, which I don't mind being reused, but the issue is that you might see the same exact level geometry 2 chapters in a row. It's more of a problem in the earlier chapters, as later on the game starts to layer more obstacles and depth into the paths you take, including a heavier emphasis on platforming once you can double jump, but you'll still see repeats of the levels without any of the more interesting gimmicks in the later chapters as well. Other than running and battling, there are also 12 fitness-themed minigames, each with novice and advanced difficulties, which can add a little extra variety to your journey. Some of these, such as Thigh Rider, Arrow Shoot and Bootstrap Tower, represent a fairly good workout while also being fun and a little challenging to get a perfect score on. Some are just plain fun, like Robo Wrecker, a whack-a-mole-esque game, and Squattery Wheel, in which you squat and squeeze the ring to shape clay. To be completely honest though, most of them aren't really engaging enough to be repeated more than a couple of times in quick succession, as a handful of tries will likely net an S rank. Some, like Bank Balance and Gluten Gallery, are easy enough that I had perfected them within 2 or 3 attempts, and the advanced level did little to make them any harder. These are, however, definitely a better workout than most of the more party-focused minigames in Wii Fit. It's fun to break up your journey with them occasionally, especially since you'll often be rewarded with a useful item for completing them. Some of the movements displayed in minigames show up in later jogging routes of the adventure. The Bootstrap Tower climbs are the most obvious example of this. It's a shame that Thigh Rider and Arrow Shoot couldn't be expanded and utilised as a movement mechanic in the core game as well, since this could have added a little more variety to the main adventure. All of the minigames can be played from the quick play menu, presumably so they can be shown off in a party atmosphere, but I wouldn't say that the replayability of any of these is enough that it'll capture the attention of a crowd for long. Part of this is because you have to take the games in turns, and doffing and donning the leg strap between each player is a little annoying. If the minigames could be played by multiple people simultaneously, then it would be a lot more fun as a group. You can also challenge your friends to see how many times they can pull or squeeze the ring con in a set time frame, and see how many of certain exercises you can do before getting tired. Again, I don't really think that these would be the most fun thing to do at a party. Villages will present you with side quests as you complete events in each world. Generally these are just to return to a level and complete it again with an added challenge, such as sprinting through a cardio-based level in a certain time limit, or breaking a certain amount of crates before reaching the goal. For minigame-focused side quests, you're most often tasked to achieve a certain score within a time limit or without touching any bombs. I found these most often to be quite repetitive and quickly stopped taking them unless they offered a useful reward, such as items of clothing, new fit skills, or stat boosting items. An issue with this approach though is that some side quests aren't available until you complete earlier ones in the chapter. I was rarely short on cash or ingredients, so those didn't make for a great incentive to repeat the same level I had just run through. In fact, by the end of the game I had enough money to purchase all available outfits that I had skipped along the way. In terms of the length of the game, it will vary greatly depending on your exercise difficulty setting. Lower difficulty means fewer reps, which means a shorter campaign as battles take less time. My battles always seem to drag on a bit because I have my difficulty set quite high, initially at 24 and later increased steadily up to 28 for the last few worlds. This means I'm doing much more muscle training than cardio. If you simply want to go for a jog while experiencing a cheery story, you could slide the difficulty right down and just sprint through the adventure. My total adventure time came in at roughly 38 exercise hours, which correlates to about 75 real-time hours of play. Somewhere between 1 and 2 exercise hours of this playtime was spent replaying levels and mini-games to get additional footage for this review. If I had completed every side quest, then it would have added 2 or 3 more exercise hours at most. If I had played on the hardest difficulty from the start of the game, then I could definitely see the 90-hour figure from the pre-release article I mentioned earlier as entirely accurate. What's more is that the game isn't over when you reach the credits. After finally beating Drago, you unlock harder versions of all the original worlds, with the difficulty scaled up to match what your suggested level is at the end of the main game. The advanced worlds don't add any additional strategy or new enemies from what I've seen so far, but there's new dialogue during story moments and new gear to collect as you revisit these older areas. While it doesn't change much about the game, it's nice to have some incentive to keep playing past the game's natural conclusion, rather than having to start over again from scratch in order to re-experience the world. If for any reason you want to forego adventuring and just do a set of exercises, you can also put together your own routines or work through bespoke ones already programmed into the game. As you follow these through, the game will score your performance. Exercise time and calories burned, as well as total reps completed, are all added to your totals from adventure mode, which is nice. There are some limitations to this mode though. You can only save 3 routines at a time, and each of these can only hold 10 exercises. Personally, I would prefer to be able to make longer sets and save at least 4 so that I could separate out abs, legs, arms and yoga. I really enjoyed my time with Ring Fit Adventure. It's definitely a lot more fun than Wii Fit, and probably the most fun I've ever had working out. Although the battles would sometimes drag on for a bit too long, I never felt bored for any extensive period. There were definitely days when I wanted to play more of the game because I was enjoying myself so much, but I had to stop because I was just too tired to continue. In terms of how effective it is as a form of exercise, I can say that I've felt my stamina improve, which can be quantified by the fact that I've been able to play for longer at a time and on harder difficulty settings since starting. My arms definitely look more toned than they did before starting, but I'm not too certain about my abs or legs. The thousands of squats and hundreds of Russian twists I've performed have likely had some beneficial effect on those muscle groups though. In terms of weight loss, I measured myself after 2 weeks of an average of 2 hours Ring Fit exercise time per day. This was while trying to keep my diet and other levels of exercise, such as the aforementioned jogging and jiu-jitsu, the same. The result was 3 kilograms weight loss. It's probably the lowest I've weighed all year, so it's definitely been an effective exercise regime. With all that said, I wouldn't advise anyone to go as hard at this game as I did. I went at it full force with the goal of writing and editing this review as quickly as possible, while also trying to get the full experience. I think that it would be much better to do an hour or two, 2 to 4 times per week, in order to have rest time between sessions and not tire yourself out. There were days when I would wake up aching all over because I was pushing to get through this game as fast as possible. A slower schedule will also allow you to savour the game and take it at a good pace, finishing a chapter or 2 per week. I think the game is a great way to exercise for anyone who possesses low to moderate levels of fitness. If you already go to the gym a few times a week, then it's unlikely to push you as much as it pushes me, but it may still be a fun way to burn some additional calories or work out some different muscle groups if you normally only focus on one. I'm certainly going to continue with Ring Fit Adventure over the next few months, albeit at a much slower pace. I want to see everything that the New Game Plus mode has to offer, and when I'm done with that, I may even start the game over again and set myself additional challenges such as not using smoothies in battle. I hope that this game sees some real success and that Nintendo makes a sequel or spiritual successor at some point in the future, because I've really enjoyed it, and I'd love to see what else the Ring-Con has to offer. Thanks very much for watching this review. It's been a while since I did a more serious video like this, and it's been an enjoyable experience. If you'd like to see some more of my serious stuff, then my Urban Rain review can be found on this channel, and there's a good video of an interview that I did with the developers of Yonoid 2 that can be found on my Stream Groups channel, the GLA stream. There's also some more comedy-focused videos on both channels if you want to check those out. Thanks for watching, bye!